you mentioned briefly carbon capturing and sequestration. I don't know if you know a lot about that area, but are you aware of any kind of environmental risks that might come out of that option?
Yes, there are. I'm not an expert in carbon sequestration, but I've learned a little bit from one of the Canadian experts, is David Keith from the University of Calgary. In essence, what you're doing with sequestration is you have two main avenues of sequestering carbon in saline aquifers or in the deep ocean. Okay? And it's not yet known, if you do that on a very large scale, whether there are going to be environmental impacts on the ecosystem. What happens to that carbon? Does it remain dissolved in the aquifers or in the ocean for a long time? Does it come back? What is the impact, because you're also altering the pH and the acidity of the media? What is the impact on the ecosystem? There's a whole array. So of many of the technologies that I'll show, I think carbon sequestration is probably behind nuclear power in terms of maturity. But it's a technology that, given its nature, if there was large-scale effort and commitment, there could be progress made very rapidly, I think, in understanding some of those issues. Certainly much faster than in the nuclear power generation sector.
As far as the hydrogen fuel cell, you showed some examples of everyday stuff, like lawnmower and stuff like that. It seems that would be easier to phase out than an entire fleet of automobiles. Is that would that have a significant impact? And if it did, when can that sort of stuff, if you know, be available to the public? When would you be able to go to Home Depot?
Okay, that's a very good question, because what has happened actually in the fuel cell industry in the last few years is a bit of a strategic shift in how to penetrate the market. The ultimate raison d'etre for fuel cell technology is transportation, because that's where you can have the most beneficial and substantial environmental impact. Okay? However, it's also the most challenging sector, because you're competing against internal combustion engines, which are an amazingly sophisticated piece of technology that can be produced at $500 or $600 a unit by GM or Toyota or Daimler Chrysler, etc. To produce fuel cells at that cost is just impossible in the market. Okay? So that's really the problem. So the shift has occurred to two areas. One is stationary power generation. For example, if you look at gensets, whereas for a car engine, what you have to look at is paying something of the order of a cost of about $50 to $60 a kilowatt. If you're looking at stationary power generation, the market and consumers are willing to pay about $1,000 a kilowatt. So all of a sudden you have something that the fuel cell is more competitive. Now, what has emerged, and in fact what you'll see next, is probably before the end of this year, some products in portable electronics that use fuel cells. Okay, laptops, cell phones, particularly the new generation of cell phone computers, which require a lot of data exchange and video screens, etc. And in those areas, what we as consumers pay is simply barefaced robbery for rechargeable batteries. But we pay because they're very small. Okay? But the cost there per kilowatt is again nearly 10 times. It's $5,000 to $10,000 a kilowatt. So there you can compete. And so the question is, Okay, I introduced fuel cell and hydrogen technology to the portable electronics sector. But what good am I doing to the environment? There isn't much that's emitted from cell phones and laptop computers and so on, right? So that has, at first, apparently no impact. But hey, just wait a minute. If there is a market of 500 million cell phones worldwide, managed to produce 200 million of those using fuel cells, all of a sudden entered into mass production. Okay? So the economies of scales kick in. I can produce fuel cells at a much, much cheaper price, and then I can make the automobile sector benefit from those lower prices. So it could accelerate sort of almost Machiavellian sort of way of penetrating the market. But it can make a lot of sense to do it that way. Yes? Sorry, I couldn't hear you very well.
I really know about a kinetic energy battery that was basically a flywheel.
Yes?
Very high RPM. Have you heard anything develop in that area?
No, but I'm sure there are still some developments going on. It's something which is potentially quite attractive. It's a very efficient means of storing energy, and it's been used in particular for regenerative type of systems. Say, for example, you have a train, right, that comes into a station, and instead of basically just breaking and sort of heating metal, you use something like that. You store the energy to break the train, and then when you start again, you reuse it and do some savings. So there are issues. I mean, people wonder about, because these flywheels are very high mass. They turn at 40, 50,000 RPM. So if one of them goes off the hook, it could create a little bit of havoc, right?